The king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, died in 1977, but his legacy and the story of his life remain as fascinating as ever. Few know, however, that Elvis's journey to stardom was paved with an unusual blend of talent, luck, and sometimes questionable decisions. Let's dive into some little-known stories and insights about the man who became known simply as the King. Elvis's movie career is often overlooked by his music fans, yet it was a significant part of his fame. An MGM executive once said, "They don't need titles, they could be numbered, they would still sell. That's why he's well paid and gets 50% of the profits." This statement reveals the pure commercial drive behind Elvis's film projects. No matter the quality, as long as they sold tickets, Elvis was a golden cash cow. Take Charo, for instance. This pseudo-western featured Elvis as a former gang member in a role that was a stark departure from his usual image. The actor Joel Crothers, a fan of Elvis, noted that the film was not good enough, despite Elvis's change of look, which included being seen unshaved for the first time. It was a bold move, but didn't quite work. Elvis's transition to non-musical roles was met with mixed reactions. Actor Joel Crothers lamented his first non-musical was Charo. It was a change of pace for him, but too late and still not good enough. This reflects the public's waning interest in Elvis as an actor by the late 1960s. By 1969, Elvis's film career was in decline. Singer Glenn Hughes of The Village People observed, between September 1969 and January 1970, 3 more Elvis Presley movies were released. To shrinking audiences, mostly women who'd been teenagers in the 1950s, Elvis was a square, like his movies. The times were changing, and Elvis's films couldn't keep up. Comedian Bob Smith, a fan of Elvis, remembered the era critically. Thank goodness in 1969 he gave up the habit of bad movie making. This sentiment was shared by many who witnessed Elvis's transition from a promising young star to a symbol of declining Hollywood glamour. The late 1960s were particularly tough for Elvis. Singer Dusty Springfield, a contemporary and friend, noted the stark contrast between Elvis's earlier success and his later struggles. On Elvis' 30th birthday in 1965, the Beatles' "I Feel Fine" became the #1 song in the US, breaking Elvis's record. "It must have been a depressing birthday for him," Springfield said. The Beatles' rise symbolized Elvis's fall from the top of the music world. Even Elvis's personal life was marked by challenges. Songwriter Hugh Martin reflected on the toll of fame. "Elvis's 30th and 40th birthdays were awful. At least he was spared a 50th. Elvis's appearance also changed dramatically." Jackie Collins, a friend, remarked, "Months after turning 40, Elvis had a facelift. It might have been better known had the result been more obvious. Fat ages a person." Elvis's rivalry with the Beatles was well known, but the depth of his feelings was more complex. Michael Hauser, a guitarist and friend, explained, "Of course, Elvis was jealous of the Beatles, but not just their success. They wrote their own songs. That talent level was beyond him." Despite this, Elvis didn't let resentment cloud his interactions, though he did have private criticisms. The Beatles' influence on Elvis's hairstyle was a point of contention. Fabrizio Miani, an actor who worked with Elvis, said, "Elvis made some on-the-set comments agreeing with critics who said the Beatles' hair were for girls. I thought that was immature and hypocritical." Elvis's public persona often clashed with his private opinions. Elvis's relationship with his entourage was also complex. Red West, another member of the so-called Memphis Mafia, noted, "Some outsiders like to put down the Memphis Mafia, but nobody turned anyone else onto drugs. Elvis started out with doctors, but his fame and the Colonel's influence led him down a bad path." The entourage played a significant role in Elvis's life, both positively and negatively. Friend and hairdresser Larry Geller observed, "Without medication, Elvis wasn't as good on stage or off as when he had it. He was an addict." This candid admission sheds light on the darker side of Elvis's later years, where drugs and medication became a crutch. Elvis's working relationship with others was often strained. A former secretary to Goldie Hawn shared, "Elvis didn't like hiring new people. Did they look down on him? Did they have his same values?" This paranoia and distrust extended to those closest to him, including assistants and staff. Writer Sheridan Morley described Elvis's management style. "Stars can't become publicly enraged, so some of them take it out on their paid minions." Regarding Elvis Presley, he considered obedience loyalty. This toxic dynamic affected many who worked with him. Despite these challenges, Elvis's career had its ups and downs, reflecting a classic Hollywood trajectory. Writer-director Nora Ephron noted, "Elvis endured because he came back big as ever. To do that, you have to have a period when you're out of favor. Elvis was up during the 50s, then down, then up again, and higher after he died." Comic actress Martha Raye observed Elvis's youthful exuberance. "I didn't like him at first. I thought he was vulgar, doing it on purpose for attention. Movement made Elvis Presley so memorable but so controversial." Elvis's unique style and energy set him apart, even if it made some uncomfortable. An anecdote from Life magazine captures Elvis's adventurous spirit. The night before he reported for induction into the Army, Elvis hosted a private blowout at Memphis's Rainbow Rollerdrome. Dividing his friends into two teams, he gave the signal and each side tried to knock the daylights out of the other. This wild celebration was a fitting end to a tumultuous period. Elvis's preference for rougher, less polished performances was evident even early on. Producer Sam Katzman recounted, one of his songs had a lyric about tigers play too rough and how he preferred a gentle teddy bear. Well, Elvis didn't care for all the teddy bears that fans sent him, and he did like to play rough sometimes. This duality in Elvis's personality, soft and tough, was a key part of his appeal. A court incident in 1956 revealed another side of Elvis. After slapping a man who slapped him, Elvis was acquitted but privately gloated about the incident, seeing it as a testament to his power. People editor Richard Stoley noted, "It showed him what he could get away with." This moment highlighted Elvis's awareness of his influence and the fine line he walked between public image and private reality. Finally, Elvis's experience with director Hal B. Wallis offers insight into his acting aspirations. When asked to play a more upbeat character, Elvis expressed a desire to play someone more like himself, avoiding excess acting. Yet his first screen role ended up being a somber character who died prematurely. This unexpected turn underscores the unpredictable nature of Elvis's career and the roles fate and producers had in store for him. Elvis Presley's life was a mix of brilliance and struggle, fame and personal battles. As we reflect on his legacy, these stories offer a glimpse into the complex man behind the myth. David Nelson, Elvis's brother, once talked about their lives. He said both he and Elvis were rich and famous before Elvis Presley became a huge star, but it was different. David had a movie career, though neither he nor Elvis were really good actors. Rick Nelson, David's name for Elvis, wrote some of his own songs. Unlike Elvis, Rick sang songs he wrote himself. Elvis, on the other hand, sang mostly songs written by others. Both David and Elvis died young, which shocked many people. The big difference between them, David felt, was energy. Rick was laid back and it sometimes made him seem not very interested, but Elvis was different. From the start, he was all about pushing boundaries. He was bold and often went too far. He wasn't afraid to be provocative. This made him stand out in a big way. Rick Nelson often spoke about the idea that there was a rivalry between him and Elvis, but he firmly said this was not true. He claimed it was made up to sell magazines. Rick remembered a saying that went around, an average American girl might like either of them, but she'd be safer with him than with Elvis. At first, Rick took this as a compliment. It meant people saw him as less risky than Elvis, but now he's not so sure. It makes him think about how people see them both. Michael Friedman, an artistic director, shared a blunt truth about Elvis. He said Elvis Presley was a member of the International Narcotics Enforcement Officers Association, in a sarcastic way. This meant Elvis was known for using drugs, even though he pretended to be against them. Elvis was an anti-drugs officer, but also a drug addict. This contradiction was part of his complicated life. Paul Henning, a TV producer, recalled an interesting piece of advice he got. He considered inviting Elvis to appear on his show, The Beverly Hillbillies, but he was told Elvis would be offended. Despite Elvis's rockabilly roots, he was advised that the show might offend him. This shows how complex Elvis's image was. On one hand, he was seen as a rebel. On the other, he was sensitive about certain things. Ruth Benedict, an author, noted that Elvis, along with Bridget Bardot, was a sexual pioneer in the 1950s. They showed what was acceptable in terms of sexual suggestion. Even when they faced criticism, their influence grew. They helped broaden the public's ideas about sexuality. Jim Kepner, a journalist and gay historian, added that many people, including some lesbians, found Elvis attractive. They were drawn to his image and tried to copy it. This shows how Elvis's appeal went beyond just music. He was a symbol of freedom and sexuality for many. Cary Grant, the famous actor, even said Elvis was a sex symbol for all seasons. This means Elvis's appeal was timeless and universal. It wasn't just about his music, but how he presented himself. Merv Griffin, a talk show host, said almost anyone could have a crush on Elvis Presley. For many, it wasn't about his music, it was about the image he created. This shows Elvis's strong impact on popular culture. Leonard Bernstein, a respected figure in music and theater, shared a private thought. He had to pretend to be indifferent to Elvis because of Elvis's past comments, like saying he would never kiss a Mexican woman. Bernstein saw this as a sign of Elvis's lack of social consciousness. Elvis grew up in a time and place where such prejudices were common, but it didn't excuse his words. Ricardo Montalban, a Mexican actor, explained that Elvis's comment was made in ignorance. Elvis didn't understand the cultural differences. To show he was trying to make amends, Elvis was paired with Dolores Del Rio in a movie where he played a character with mixed heritage. This was seen as a gesture of apology. Katie Girodo, a Mexican actress who worked with Elvis, said she noticed a change over time. In a movie called Stay Away, Joe, they both played Native Americans. Elvis was polite and seemed to have learned more about different cultures by then. This suggests that while Elvis's early comments were problematic, he may have grown and learned from his experiences. Don Siegel, who directed Elvis in a few films, shared insights into Elvis's personality. Elvis liked to figure things out on his own, often asking only those he respected for help. He had a curious mind and would ponder questions deeply. This curiosity led him to create a meditation garden at his home, Graceland, where he could be alone and reflect. Jack Sue, an actor and friend, mentioned Elvis's interest in meditation. This shows Elvis's desire for inner peace and understanding. However, Jack also recounted a humorous moment where Elvis jokingly asked if meditation was related to medication, showing his playful side. David Rosen, a psychiatrist and author, pointed out that Elvis's name has roots in Hebrew, meaning the force of God, and his middle name, Aaron, was that of Moses' brother, a high priest. This suggests a deep cultural and religious background. Larry Geller, a friend and spiritual advisor to Elvis, noted that Elvis thought the Tao, an ancient Chinese philosophy, was another way to talk about God. This shows Elvis's openness to different spiritual ideas. James Shigeta, a Japanese-American actor, shared a rumor he heard about Elvis believing that people of Asian descent were actually gay Chinese. This reflects Elvis's limited understanding of race and culture. Despite this, Elvis interacted with many people from diverse backgrounds, even if his views were sometimes narrow. Guy Lee, who played a character named Ping Pong in a movie with Elvis, recalled that Elvis was curious about different cultures but often asked naive questions. For example, he asked if there were Afro-Americans in Wales, showing a lack of geographical knowledge. This highlights Elvis's genuine, if misguided, attempts to learn about the world. Truman Capote, the famous writer, shared an insight into Elvis's views on race. Elvis and his family used racial slurs, which was common in their community. However, as a public figure, Elvis had to distance himself from such bigotry. Over time, especially after mixing with diverse groups, Elvis seemed to become less bigoted, though he remained politically conservative, supporting the Vietnam War. Sarah Petty, a Newsweek senior editor, recounted an unreleased interview where Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, expressed surprise that Marilyn Monroe converted to Judaism. He joked that Elvis couldn't understand why because she don't look Jewish. This shows the racial and cultural biases even Elvis's inner circle had. Alec McCowan, a UK actor, made an interesting remark about Elvis's Colonel title, which came from the Netherlands, a country known for its progressive views. This contrasts with the more conservative parts of the United States, suggesting that even Elvis's titles and honors came with their own complexities. Mel Torme, a singer and friend of Tom Jones, noted that Elvis admired Tom because he saw similarities between them, like the sex appeal and the fan base. However, Elvis was curious about Tom's musical roots, asking if there were Afro-Americans in Wales. This shows Elvis's genuine, if misguided, curiosity about different cultures and musical influences. In the end, Elvis Presley was a complex figure. His life was marked by brilliance and mistakes, charm and controversy. He left an indelible mark on music and culture, even as he struggled with his own beliefs and prejudices. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had a personality that was as complex as his music. Friends and family shared stories that paint a picture of a man who was both confident and insecure, generous and selfish. These contrasting traits made him both a beloved figure and someone who struggled with personal relationships. To his inner circle, Elvis had a way of making bold statements that stopped everyone in their tracks. One time, after praising Tom Jones, Lamar Fike, one of Elvis's longtime associates, joked that Elvis and Tom should just get married. This off-the-cuff remark surprised everyone, especially since such comments weren't common among Elvis's staff. It showed Elvis's comfortable nature with his friends, allowing him to be playful and honest. However, Elvis had his share of envy and competitiveness too. He once told a friend that he wished he could have achieved what Frank Sinatra did, getting dual one-hits from the same album, something Elvis never accomplished. This envy didn't ruin their friendship but kept them as rivals rather than close friends. Elvis respected Sinatra's talent and success, even if he wished he could have reached similar heights. Elvis also had a unique approach to his fame and charisma. His manager, Tom Parker, was known to keep Elvis's public appearances and charity work limited. Parker believed that keeping Elvis exclusive made him more valuable. But this strategy was seen by some, like philanthropist Sybil Brand, as selfish and harmful to Elvis's reputation. They felt he could have made a bigger impact with more public appearances and generosity. Despite his fame, Elvis was not immune to personal struggles. He would swing between feeling incredibly confident and deeply insecure. At times, this insecurity led to outbursts of anger and selfish acts. There was an incident where, after gifting cars to a couple, Elvis became violent when interrupted, hitting a man who complained. Shocked by his own behavior, Elvis later sent someone to check on the man, showing he wasn't without compassion. As the years went by, Elvis's views became more conservative. He blamed the Beatles for influencing the hippie movement, which he despised. He also criticized what he saw as suggestive content in TV shows, aligning himself with the political views of figures like Nixon and Hoover. This shift was a departure from his earlier image, where he was accused of doing the opposite, influencing young minds with his music and style. Elvis's later years saw him retreat to Memphis, away from the bright lights of New York and Los Angeles. This move was seen by some, like Joan Rivers, as a sign of increasing intolerance and self-righteousness. His interests became narrower, focusing more on his immediate surroundings and less on the diverse world outside. In his personal relationships, Elvis's actions often caused controversy. His marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, especially to Michael Jackson, upset many, including his father's estate. Critics saw it as a move to gain from Elvis's legacy, something his father Tom Parker would have strongly opposed. Parker saw the marriage as a desecration of Elvis's memory, believing it would upset his son deeply. Throughout his life, Elvis had relationships with young men who were often in service roles, a fact that was well known but rarely discussed openly. This aspect of his life added another layer to his complex personality, showing a man who struggled with traditional views on relationships and sexuality. In the end, Elvis Presley remains a figure shrouded in myth and mystery. His life was a mix of incredible talent, personal struggles, and controversial choices. The stories shared by those close to him reveal a man who was both larger than life and deeply human, reminding us that even stars have their flaws and contradictions.